Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 389 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host today, Ben, and I'm joined by Chris. How you doing, mate? You keeping well?
Good evening. Very well. Yeah, very well, thank you. I'm in a good mood, Ben. I'll be honest with you. About half an hour, I wasn't, and there was nothing.
And then you saw me.
Yeah, something like that. No, I saw food is actually what happened. So half an hour ago, I'd been out for a run with Gary because I'm trying my best to be good and practice as I preach, and I just hate it. And I'll never enjoy it, but it gets me out. But I did it, so well done me and all that. I'd had a very busy day, so I hadn't eaten very much at all today. So I got in and I got most of my prep done before the run, but I finished off afterwards. And I was just getting set up for this. I was getting my headphones out of my bag, and the little kind of nubby bit on the end that goes in your ear had fallen off. I thought I'd lost it, and I was getting very, very, very irritable. And I thought, hang on a minute, I think I'm hungry because I'm getting really pissed off at something that doesn't matter at all. And that's not like me. I'm pretty chilled. So I had a shower. I've had a bite to eat. Suddenly, I'm all better now. So yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Hangry Chris is never one to be trifled with.
No, very much similar to Sunday morning, Chris, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm good. We've had, it's been a busy old time in the day job. Yesterday, for those of you that don't know, I work in the IT sphere, and overnight the air conditioning in our server room decided to pack up, which if you are aware of anything around servers and server rooms, they get very hot if they don't have any air conditioning. So somebody was heading to work. He had to disappear to a different part of the country. So he popped in a little bit early to pick something up. Just by chance, had to get something out of the server room, opened the door, and apparently it was like a scene from Backdraft. It was like 45 degrees in there. So we had to find like a little tiny portable air conditioning unit, which there weren't many in the office. So basically put that in the door. And the problem is putting that in the door without a big exhaust pipe, because there was no openable windows near where we were, meant that while cooler air was actually reaching the server room, the hot air from it was just spewing straight into the office.
Oh, that's very pleasant for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I was sat in an office that was hitting around 35 degrees for most of the day yesterday. It was,
that doesn't sound fun. I
have to say, not pleasant.
It's hardly hard-hitting news, but my God, has it been hot over the last few days? It's been absolutely horrible, hasn't it? It's been horrible. It's been much better today. I've been much happier. I do a weight management program for a living, and I was delivering today, and I was delivering a new one in Bourne. And we always do a little bit of an icebreaker at the start, and it's normally quite light-hearted. I have two that I pick from. Number one, what's your favourite place in the world and why? Mine, I always say Sinsel Bank and explain a semi-serious reason as to why. Another one, what's your favourite weather and why? And honestly, at the time, it was 9:30 this morning. It was about 18 degrees and it was just overcast. And I said, my favourite weather is right now. And I appreciate that's really sad, really boring, but we're all much more comfortable today than we have been over the last week, aren't we? So that's me. How boring. I am grey and overcast. I mean, read into that as well.
No, I quite like it when it's like that. I'm a big fan of autumn. Like autumn is kind of the perfect weather for me. It's like, yeah, summer, hot, sweaty, irritable, no. And then you get into autumn. It's like, oh, cool. Just the start of autumn. It's like, it's still maybe a little bit warm, but yeah, it's just starting to cool down a little bit. Everything's nice and chill. And then obviously you start looking forward to Halloween. But yeah, no, it's, I've just seen that Emily is in the chat saying good evening, chaps. Obviously, normally the couple of pods that we've done with me and Emily, it kind of tends to happen when there's a heat wave. We found out. Yeah, we've. If you ever need some good weather, just message us, and we'll see if me and Emily can get on a pod again, and it will undoubtedly spur the heat wave. That's exactly what it is. But
well, yeah. Speaking of pods with you and Emily, by the way, I imagine you had a jolly good time in your most recent one together.
It was wonderful. Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. Obviously, if you haven't listened to it yet, please do go and check it out. It's on the YouTube channel, and also on the podcast feed, Emily and I got to spend an hour with the big man, Matt Reed, and sort of probe him and pull out some good anecdotes from him around his time at the Imps. And I think there was a few stories that were they're kind of well known, but it was nice to kind of get him from the horse's mouth. But I think we also managed to get a couple of new stories, including one which is I think it's fairly obvious why he's not retrained as a bus driver since retiring as a professional footballer. He had an incident with the team coach that he wasn't supposed to be driving. It was a really, really good evening, and obviously, thanks to Matt for giving us his time of a Friday evening. It was a little bit bizarre, sort of speaking to somebody who's so highly regarded amongst Lincoln City fans. And as we said at the time, he was, when me and Gaz started the podcast, he was the number one with a bullet guest that we thought we've got to get Reedy at some point. And 7 years later, we managed to get him. So
brilliant, really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, check it out, guys, if you haven't had a chance yet.
Yeah, no, I'm just a thoroughly nice bloke as well. Lots of fun stories from that one. But I mean, we're 6 minutes in, and we should probably talk about some recent Lincoln City stuff. Ta-da! There it is. There's not. There hasn't been a huge amount coming out of the club officially this week. One bit of news which we'll touch on a little bit later on, which has actually sparked a little bit of debate, which we're going to get into. But we will start with a rumour, Chris. So, rumour is Salford City have had 2 bids knocked back for their right back, Haji Minoga, and the scuttlebutt on the internet at the moment is that club is in fact the Imps. So, right back, I think he's 23. 23-year-old right back, potentially being looked at by us. On first glance, you think, well, we've already got a right back. We don't need another one, do we? But you've looked a little bit deeper, and I think we've all had a bit of a cast our eye over it. And I think we think this makes sense, don't we?
I do. Yeah, I certainly think this makes a bit of sense. I agree with you. On first glance, you think, hang on, we're bidding, as in paying money for a right back. We don't need one of those. We've got Tendai Darikwa definitely for this season, potentially for one more, even with his current contract. So we don't need one. But we, of course, need 2 players for every position. So we will need to sign a right back at some point. But on first glance, the fact that we've been linked with paying a fee for one was a little bit surprising. But as you mentioned, upon further digging, there's actually, I think, quite a lot here that makes sense. So just to mention a little bit about Haji Minoga, currently plays for Salford City, as you mentioned. Only signed for Salford this time last season after spending the majority of his football career on the books of Portsmouth. Only actually made 5 appearances in 6 seasons at Portsmouth. Mainly had a string of non-league loans, most notably a season and a half at Aldershot Town in the National League. And then, really impressed in the National League, to be honest. And that was released by Portsmouth last summer. Salford snapped him up on a 1-year deal with an option of 1 extra year. So it was probably a little bit of maybe a risk at the time for Salford, but it seemed like an educated risk at the time. And he's had a real breakout season in League Two this season for Salford. Started 33 matches, 39 overall appearances. Salford have primarily played a back 3 system last season, which makes you think, well, hang on, does that really fit? But again, digging a little bit deeper, he's played about 50% of the time as the right centre back and about 50% of the time as the right wing back. So clearly capable of playing on that outside. The mixture of those 2 positions together is, well, a right back in a 4, isn't it? Really, there's clearly a lot of transferable skills there. 185 centimeters tall, so I think that's 6'3", maybe 6'2", but ultimately pretty big lad for a right back. But then when you dig a little bit deeper into his style, I think this just really, really stands out as a potential Lincoln City player. It really fits our ethos, I think, in terms of our younger players in our signing. I remember something Jez mentioned in our live show a little while, and he said, one thing how you can punch above your weight financially and in this league is you can work harder, run faster, run harder than the opposition. So when we're signing players, yeah, of course we want to have players that have got good technical ability, good tactical ability. Of course you do, but can he run? Does he run? And does he want to run? Like they're 3 tick boxes that every signing that we make has to tick. And my God, does he tick those boxes? So I'm not going to bore you with loads of stats, but I haven't been on for 3 weeks, so hey, you might have missed them. In terms of his position, he's in the top 8% for tackles won, which is a good sign, but just below average for success rate. So what that means is he's just really involved. He's really aggressive. I think if you was to put this in Football Manager terms, he would probably have the trait gets stuck in. So yeah, just really, really aggressive on the front foot with his defending. In all honesty, isn't always totally successful. Maybe a little exuberant in that regard. But when you've won in the top 10% of tackles in League Two, you can't be half bad at that. Has made a lot of chances. Won the ball back in the final third really well. Top 12% for recoveries overall, so just generally winning the ball back, and also scores really, really highly for successful dribbles from players that play at right back. So dribble quality, not quality, dribble quantity. So he runs with the ball really often, and he's relatively successful at it. So lots of tackles, lots of running, lots of dribbling, quite a lot of crossing. Just a really all-action, forward-thinking right back. Has picked up 12 yellow cards, no reds, so that would indicate a little bit of exuberance there. Passing numbers not brilliant, but Salford were a pretty direct team last season, third most long passes in the league. So you'd expect most players in that team relative to the rest of the league won't have very good passing accuracy because they're playing more long, low risk balls. So ultimately, tactically, I think he really, really fits our recruitment policy for the role that he's playing. That right back needs to be athletic, needs to be aggressive, and he's absolutely that. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now he's 23, which is a really interesting age because he was on a 1-year deal. Excuse me. He was on a 1-year deal at Salford, but they've triggered a 1-year extension. So right now he's got 1 more year at Salford that he's contracted for. This time next summer, he'll be out of contract and he'll be 24 years old. So he can leave for free with no fee whatsoever. So if Salford are going to get any money for him, it will be this season.
Yeah.
But because he's out of contract next summer and it won't be a fee, the fee that would be required this summer, you would imagine would be much more affordable than if he had 2 or 3 years on his deal. I think it's really interesting that we've got Tendai because that experience that he could potentially learn from if we were to sign him makes a lot of sense. Come into the environment, into the squad, wanting to play, but without the pressure of having to get up to speed straight away. Wouldn't surprise me if we were able to get a deal over the line of maybe £100,000 or less and a reasonably affordable deal on a long contract, 3 years plus 1, or maybe a 4-year deal. Think Rob Street, think JG McKiernan style signing with the long term in mind. Tendai most likely is going to be our first choice, but it's good to have a backup, good to have competition. But he's, as much as he's incredibly fit for his age, he's not going to be here forever. So yeah, it ticks quite a lot of boxes. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But this makes a lot more sense than some of the other rumours that I've seen this season after doing a little bit more digging. Just seeing Andy's comment in the chat. Turns out I can see the comments, by the way. Couldn't Hamer cover right back? Absolutely could. Certainly could. I think towards the end of last season, though, he was probably our standout centre back. So I think if you're moving him out of his best position, yeah, could he do it? Absolutely. Do we need to sign a right back right now? No, we've got cover there that can do it. You're absolutely right there, Andy. Couldn't agree more. But ideally, you want to have 2 players for every position. And if we see Tom Hamer's best position as being centre back, you'd like to be able to play him there as often as you can. But of course, it's the other side of the pitch. It's left back that we're probably a little bit more interested in right now because we haven't got any of those. But yeah, after initially maybe debunking this at first glance, I think there's something in this potentially. And yeah, without wanting to give too much away, obviously I'm very fortunate to have access to the Football Manager database. And the Salford researchers were doing a bit of tweaking, shall we say, to his ability. So there must be something in that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it as you say, on the surface, you look at it, you go, we need a left back. Like that's the primary focus, surely. But yeah, if it's one that I think makes sense for all parties, when you say it's going to be like kind of like a JJ or a Rob Street situation, there is a part of me that wonders whether he would come in and then immediately go out. I'd probably be a bit reluctant if that was the case from the club's perspective.
I'd agree with that.
Just, I mean, primarily for the optics of it. You know, we've seen what's happened with JJ in particular. You know, he's obviously gone back out again, and there's a lot of blowback from that at the moment. And it's, why has he gone back out? It's like, because he needs to get first team football. Now, if you're bringing in a 23-year-old that's performed in League Two pretty well by all accounts, is he immediately going to slot into a League One starting 11? Probably not, particularly when the stumbling block there is Tendai Darikwa. But if you've got games coming up, you're probably looking at about October time when it quickly starts becoming Saturday, Tuesday. If you're looking at that kind of spell and going, we might need some cover for Tendai. Yes, he was the second most performant member of the playing squad last season and was, in the squad every game bar 2, I think. One, yeah. And the only reason he missed them was essentially the birth of his child, which we can let off. Yeah. It's one of those situations where he may need some cover this season. Yes, he's still incredibly fit, but he's older than he was last year. So,
yeah, I think. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you'd finished. My bad.
No, so no, I think it. From what you've said and from what we've had a look at, I think it does make sense as that the succession plan. And John Booth's put it in there as well, saying Tendai won't be playing Saturday, Tuesday next year, so we'll need that backup. Good for the succession planning as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that hits the nail on the head, really. Just on Tendai briefly, I think, it's really commendable that he was so available and so consistent last season and played so many games. But it'd be great if he didn't have to, wouldn't it? Like if he's performing well and he's fit and he doesn't need a rest, brilliant. But Michael likes to rotate his squad. I imagine if we had a viable alternative in that role for the majority of last season, as good as Tendai was, a bit like James Collins, you want the best when that player's on the pitch, you want the best version of them on the pitch, don't you? And sometimes that needs to be managed a little bit so that you get the best 11 on the pitch at the right time. Yes. It makes total sense to have a viable backup. Now, I'm with you, though, on a potential loan out in terms of would I see us signing a player and loaning him straight out? No, not. I don't think we'll see any of those signings this summer, to be honest. I don't think we'll see many, if any, what would be labelled as a project player, like a Zach Bradshaw, maybe, that came in, hasn't even paid a kick for us, and then left the club permanently. I know that was mentioned on last week's pod, and you've discussed that already, so we won't go over that in depth, but I don't expect to see those speculative signings anymore. I think every player that we sign is going to be signed with a view to having a role for our first team, hopefully at the start of the season. And again, like you say, lots of games at the start of the season. We're in all cups. So you're going to get at least 3 EFL trophy games. You're going to have EFL League Cup games, and potentially FA Cup games and runs there. So that plus Saturday, Tuesday league games, like there's a lot of football in the first half of the season. So there's good opportunity for squad rotation and these maybe more fringe players to have an opportunity. And then, hey, if it gets to January and they've not had played as much as they'd like to or needed to, when the fixture list eases off and they have a loan at the second half of the season, they come back, hopefully like Rob Street has, and absolutely smash their loan and come back this time next season. And hopefully he's going to be really a valuable first team squad player. That makes total sense. I think JJ McKinnon still has the potential to do that. I do believe that his desire to leave was his terms rather than the club's real open ambition. But I respect the fact he wants to go and play first team football at this level. So that could in a year's time work out in everyone's favour. So this I think fits maybe that bill in that come in, we'll challenge Tendai, we'll play some football, see where we are in January. But could potentially be a long-term replacement for him. If we're even in for him, if we are, as I said, mysterious League One club that's had a couple of bids rejected by Salford. But yeah, of all the rumours that we've seen this summer, this one does make a bit of sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, we've spent 15 minutes talking about it, and it could be a completely different club that's got in for him. But yes, we
Well,
shall
we did
see.
that with Denver Hume as well, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, we did. Obviously, Denver Hume has gone to Fleetwood. It sounds like there is big money being thrown around there. I've got some friends of friends that are relatively close, and it sounds like there is not just a doubling of wages, but essentially a trebling of wages around Denver Hume going to Fleetwood. And I mean, obviously there was rumours that we were interested. It sounds like if we were, there would probably have been a 5-minute discussion with the agent saying, all right, what do you want? And then he goes, well, we're being offered this by another club. Oh, okay, bye then. That's probably the extent of the discussions. It's another example of silly money being thrown around. Obviously, this time around, it's not in our division; it's the division below. I don't know. Is this a sign that maybe we should be not necessarily worried, but hyper aware of it? I guess.
Maybe. More than anything, this just baffled me, really, because Denver Hume was statistically the best left back in League Two last season, particularly going forward. Like most assists in the league, full stop. Really creative player, great set piece delivery, reasonable defender. Good, really solid, clearly good enough to play in League One. The rumours that were linking us with him also linked plenty of other League One teams, so it wasn't just us. It's not like we've missed out to a Fleetwood team. Like if that is the case, then every League One team that was interested in him, and you imagine the best left back in League Two on a free transfer out of contract is going to be grabbing the attention of lots of clubs in League One who would be willing to offer a reasonable financial package there. And I don't like to blindly just kind of throw the check put around and say, oh, it must be earning loads of money. This club's got loads of money. They're cheating the system, blah, blah, blah. Like, because it can become really tiresome. We know the financial situation at the club. We know there's lots of other clubs spending more than us. We know we're trying to be sensible. We all know that as facts. What's truly baffling is it's bloody Fleetwood. Like albeit more ambitious in terms of finances, but a smaller football club than Grimsby Town than he's left. And that's not, you mentioned Fleetwood, like flashing, especially in the cast. They've only made 2 other signings this summer. They've signed Toby Malarkey, who was Crawley Town's captain, but he's from the Northwest anyway, so that seemed like a move home. Will Davis from Sutton as well, centre forward out of a relegated League Two side. That's all they'd signed so far. So we don't know what the wages are, but it's not like they'd signed 10 players so far and it looks like, oh my God, Fleetwood are having a right go. And then Denver Hume just rocks up there. And it's just absolutely baffling. And I don't like to judge people without knowing them, but the only reasonable explanation is the fact they must be paying him a shit ton. Like they just must be, because why else would he go to another League Two club when he clearly would have offers? Whether we know it's from us or not, who knows? But he clearly would have had offers in League One. And what really bugs me is the fact that it's Fleetwood and their owner, and he is their owner, by the way, Andy Pearley. I know his son is officially the chairman, but Andy Pearley is in prison due to financial misdemeanors. And yeah, this just really winds me up. Not as a Lincoln City fan, just as a football fan in general.
Yeah, I feel like I should have a big flashing banner across the top of the screen that just says allegedly repeatedly just at the top for that little section. But yeah, I mean, look, you've got Grimsby finished 9th last season. They've obviously had playoff ambitions. They were getting relatively close to them at one point as well, and then kind of fell apart. Fleetwood down in 14th. How'd you say, on paper it just doesn't make sense. There has to be something pretty bloody spectacular going on to tempt him away. And like I said, the mutterings that I've heard seem to imply that they have trebled his wages. So, I mean, fair play to him, but yeah.
Can't blame him. If that's on the table, then you're going to take it, aren't you? But or you'd expect a lot of people would do. It's just, I know this just goes to show the level of news we've got though, Ben, because we're talking reasonably in depth about a player that we both probably assumed that we weren't even that interested in the first place. But it's an interesting wider discussion of football and transfer market at the moment, isn't it? Rather than just affecting us. But what is frustrating is statistically the best left back in League Two has gone to another club in League Two, and that's just weird when we need a left back.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. If we didn't need a left back, it'd be irrelevant news, wouldn't it? But we'd quite like a left back at some point. So it felt more relevant to talk about it, even if we weren't really in for him. We need a left back, and he's off the table now. Ultimately,
yeah, absolutely. I did just want to quickly pick on a comment, or pick up on, rather not pick on. That sounds very harsh. I wanted to pick up on a comment from a little bit earlier on from Paul in the chat. He says, 65-year-old Lincoln fan listening from California. I am slightly envious of you there, Paul. I fail to understand how, as an academy club, we raised Jackson and failed to benefit or plan from his departure on a free transfer. Now, I assume he's talking about Jackson Tomac.
I would assume so. Yeah.
With
one thing about him is he's only 14 years old, so we legally can't even offer him like a scholarship, whatever it's called these days, but the equivalent of a scholarship. So sadly, we're powerless, really. If another club wants to sign that player, then they can. Now, I believe we have had some sort of package with Forest above kind of market value. What that is, we have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Is it always upsetting? You know, he's someone that broke a record in the FA Youth Cup, wasn't he? He scored youngest ever recorded goal scorer in the FA Youth Cup. But also when that happens, that's going to get attention, isn't it, from bigger clubs ultimately? And yeah, of course, we all want those what clearly are really bright young talents to come and play for our first team. Of course, we do. At that age, we are quite literally powerless, really, to do anything about it. Once they get into, it's only once they have a professional contract, which they're not legally, I think, allowed to sign until they're 17 years old, that we can even have any sort of legal dispute against that. No, Forest, I think, have treated us as well as they reasonably can at that point. But exactly the information, I don't know. But yeah, he's only 14 years old. I think that's the point that's really worth pointing out. He's even a long way away from being a first team player for anybody at that age. So is it a shame? Yeah. But we can't really do a lot about it, or at least that's my understanding of the situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the understanding of the Stacey West at the minute is that yes, he has obviously left the club. He's gone to a bigger club, but there was I think it may have gone to a tribunal if he'd have just sort of up and left anyway, because obviously there is the development costs and everything else, and something would have been worked out. However, the understanding is that. The Imps had been compensated sufficiently above what would have been expected at one of those tribunals. So, I mean, it's going to benefit him as a player. Obviously, we spoke about him a few weeks ago, actually, on the pod. So it's not like a Regan Poole scenario, for example, where we've got a professional player that's run down the contract and left, and we could have got money for him at a certain point. We wouldn't have been able to, quote unquote, sell him to another academy, because that's not how they work, unfortunately.
In that age, if another academy wants to sign you, then it's up to the player to go.
Yes,
basically, if they want to. And I'm sure there's more to it than that, but ultimately there's not a lot that can be challenged, as far as I'm aware. But I absolutely echo the sentiments. Is it a shame to see what's a very promising young player no longer be part of our club? Yeah, of course it is. But when you perform like he does, just like if Rob Street scores 30 goals this season, then he's going to catch the attention of teams higher up, isn't he? That's what's going to happen. So it happens at all levels and all ages, apparently. So there we are.
Yeah, definitely so. That was a nice little move away from planned topics. So the main talking points really this week were obviously the Minoga rumours, and then there's basically, I think, all four of the players that left the club following the announcement of the retained list, they now all have new clubs. So we'll probably talk about one of them now, and then touch on the other ones after a short break. But I think possibly the most surprising one for me is that Tyler Walker has found a new club, and it is an EFL club. He's gone to Barrow on a 1-year contract. I think the thing that surprises me on this one is purely the fact that he's back in the EFL. When we spoke about him at Wealdstone was on the night of our live over at Tension Twisted, and it was that day where it's like, okay, he seems to have done fairly well. I think he's got a goal and an assist at that point, and then it was literally on that day he went off after I think 27 minutes, I think, for Wealdstone. And you go, is this another recurrence of the problem? And I don't think he featured again until the end of the season. So, given his record and given his history, it feels like this is a massive gamble for Barrow. But I mean, again, we've met Tyler, we've spoken to him, we've seen him at the training ground trying to get himself fit and everything else. I'm happy for him. I really am happy that he's got himself a new contract, and it's another chance to kickstart the career. But this feels like a big risk for Barrow, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the fact it's only a 1-year deal mitigates that risk a little bit.
Yes.
I'm with you. I'm just chuffed to bits for Tyler. You know, we all like Tyler Walker. We all wished it worked out. Sadly, it didn't. It appears that by no one's fault, really. It was just, an unfortunate situation with his injuries. It was a calculated risk, and it didn't work out, sadly. But we've spoken about that at length. But delighted for him that he's got, to be honest, just any professional deal. So the fact he's even in the EFL is great, because obviously went on loan to Wealdstone at the end of the season, who are one of only a very small number of semi-professional clubs in the National League, and clearly showed his quality there. But as you mentioned, to even pick up another injury towards the end of the season, it just increases the risk factor in the transfer window, doesn't it? So, like, honestly, my gut instinct is we'd see him at like Alfreton in National North or something like that. I really did think we'd see him at a same professional club who was willing to take a risk on him on a part-time basis. And when fit, and he'd have absolutely walked to that level. But clearly is capable of playing at League Two. There's no denying that. It's just if he can stay fit. And Kate's put the same comment there. If he's doing a lot of heavy lifting there, yeah. So was I surprised? Yes, really surprised. Just like you were, Ben. Really surprised. Not because of his ability, but because of, like you said, his injury record, that he's got a League Two role. But there's not that many ex-players that drop down a division that I particularly take much interest in all honesty. But I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for Barrow's scores this coming season, and particularly for Tyler's involvement, because I really would just like to see him enjoy his football career and be able to play plenty of games. And I don't even mind if he doesn't score loads and loads of goals, but if he's playing regularly and just being able to feel like a professional footballer again, that'll just be massive for him, and that would be lovely to see, because it must have been hell over the last few years for him.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, we all wish him well and hope he can rekindle something. And have a good back half of his career. I think it's probably fair to say. So, right, we're at 32 and a half minutes, so it's probably time for the traditional ad break and interlude. And it's the return of one of our favourite little bits around the podcast. So we'll leave you with this, and we will catch you the other side of an ad break.
I'm Matt Reed, and you're listening to the Stacey West podcast.
It's good, isn't it?
It's good. Thanks, Reed. Love you.
Yay. No, genuinely, like the loveliest man.
Yeah.
And he was actually a little bit nervous of when it went out, and I just went, mate, you smashed it. It's great. So
what's he got to be nervous about?
So right, let's run through some comments. Let's see who we got in. Andy is in as always. Evening, gents. How we doing, mate? You well? John Booth is in. Harry Warby is in. Oliver Hardwick is in. Emily's in, as we've said. Stu's in. Hi, boys. Hello. How we doing? Brian Gray says good event, and then says whoops, evening. It's all good, mate. Andy S is in, says good evening, everybody. Let's have a look. Kate says, even guys, hope you're both well. Joining late, but looking forward to the stat attack. I think you might have just missed it.
Just missed it. Yeah, it was only a little one this week, actually. Well, really little.
Johnny Benson says, hello, good evening. Where else are we? Andy Blackburn says, good evening. And Keith Clifton says, evening, lads. Hope you're keeping well. We're good, mate. Yeah, it's good that it's a little bit cooler now. It's all fine.
Can I add something, Ben?
Go on.
We haven't actually spoken about, I don't think. I don't know if this needs to go on to the actual main pod, but this bit's interesting. In my head, it's this season now. It's not next season anymore. It's this season. If that makes sense. Since the fixtures came out last week. Does that make sense? Oh, I don't know if Ben's even there. Oh, no. What's happened? Well, it's a good job this is the interim bit, isn't it? Because Ben appears to have frozen. I'm assuming it's not me and it's him. Could someone just pop something in the chat and just let us know whether it's Ben that's frozen or Chris that's frozen? That would be great to see.
Hello.
Oh, hello! Here he is. Welcome back.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, it's good that did it when it happened because it was during the little interlude. But yeah, my internet just dropped.
Oh, well, it came back pretty quickly. And everyone just got in the comments section. Thank you, everybody. I was just saying that it's a big moment. Really, was last week. Really, when the fixtures came out, and particularly now I'm on. This is the first podcast I've been on for I think 3 weeks. So everything up until tonight, really, I've been talking about next season. Whereas in my head now, it's now this season. Yeah. And there's a little flick switch that goes on in the back of my mind because I always take an interest in the off season. Of course I do. I'm a Lincoln City fan. I'm a football fan. Of course I take an interest. But I quite like just taking a back seat now and then and just enjoying 2 or 3 weeks, just taking a more of a casual interest. And then as soon as those fixture lists came out, I was like, there we go. Switch gone. I'm back on it. Like I'm so engaged. I'm so focused. I like to think I'm on every last bit of news and everything that's happening. Like it's interesting how quickly that changes. And it's just that moment. Oh, we've got fixtures. It's this season now. Football's back. That's exactly how it's felt to me. And I just thought that was worth referencing because I haven't seen you since then.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So right now my internet is back and I can see people saying that I'm now back. We shall come back in, I think, to the pod and we'll talk about the other bits. So
let's.
Cool. If we're ready, in 3, 2, 1, and we're back. There was an ad break there, and I had some internet connectivity issues, which were perfectly timed for being in the break. So thank you to the gods of Virgin Media for not quite breaking me during the actual podcast. I can't wait to get off Virgin Media. Sorry, it's a long old story, but yeah, we could only get Virgin Media when we moved. And I'm like, cool. I'd like to move away from them as soon as I can. So as soon as the contract's up, we'll hopefully have another choice. Yeah. So obviously we've spoken about Tyler Walker just beforehand. Chris is laughing at a comment. I presume it's Keith's comment.
It is, yeah.
So he says, "What does everyone think the chances are of Pordy getting sent off against us first match?"
It will be weird to see him in a Reading shirt. Particularly so quick after leaving the very first game of the season at home. That will be weird. I think Paulie's brilliant, but we all know he's got a little bit of a temper now and then. And if I think our players will know how to wind him up. So yes, it might be worth It might be worth 50p. That
if Ethan Arahan is still with us.
Oh yeah, good point.
Do you think there might be a bit of needle there? Just winding him up a little bit.
I mean, it's Ethan Arahan. Yes.
Yeah. Wasn't really a question, Chris. Right, so yeah, obviously we have spoken about Tyler Walker finding a new club in Barrow, but 2 other former imps have found. One of the former imps has found a new club this week, following Zach Bradshaw last week and Ali Smith at the conclusion of the season. Jordan Wright has moved on from Grimsby and he's gone to Newport on a free transfer. This is one that I think on the surface probably sounds a little bit disappointing all round. Jordan Wright went to Grimsby, played 34 times last season, so it's not like he was a bit part player. Seems like he had a bit of a mixed reception from the fan base, though, wasn't necessarily a smash hit with them. I'm the fact that it's a free transfer is probably the thing that bugs me the most about it. Obviously, we make sure we have a future interest in all of our players when they leave us, and this could potentially put paid to that future interest unless there's. I'm always intrigued by this, so you may be able to shed a little bit more light on it. Is there any legal standing to say we want a future interest on the next 2 transfers? Because at that point, it's not down to even the club that you've sold him, is it?
Yeah, my understanding of this is if a player runs down their contract and becomes a free agent, all the clauses that were associated with that contract end. But if a player is purchased by a new club, then then they roll over by a certain percentage. Exactly how that works, not 100% sure. Not 100% sure. But ultimately, I imagine if Grimsby have said, you can go on a free transfer, but we want a 25% sell-on clause if he does really well. And if Newport sell him for 100 grand next summer, Grimsby would then get 25k of that. I imagine if we had a future interest in Jordan, we'd then get a percentage of that 25 grand, theoretically. But realistically speaking, I wouldn't expect us to get any further money from Jordan Wright. But he did leave for a fee last summer. So, you know, we've already got some money in the bank from him. Now, I've got a friend who's a Grimsby fan. I know that might be not allowed, but grew up at school together. So, hey.
Someone's got to be friends with him.
Yeah, I suppose. But we chat a little bit now and then about football, and I took a bit of an interest in how Jordan Wright was doing, because let's not forget, this time last summer, there was talk around him potentially becoming our number one, particularly after Lucas Jensen left the football club. So I was like, oh, well, he's played a few games. He's been relatively reliable in those games. He looks like a dependable goalkeeper, certainly at League Two standard, if not potentially League One for us. There was talk of that. So I thought he would go to Grimsby and be really impressive in League Two. That was my gut instinct. And yeah, fair to say my friend Matt wasn't quite so keen early season. I think he had a couple of I just didn't comment. He certainly didn't impress Matt too much. But then we caught up over sort of Christmas time, and he said actually he's been a bit more consistent. I think he'll be all right. And then he regressed towards the end of the season. So it seems like maybe relationships have soured a little bit there. Trust has fallen a little bit, and he's moved on to Newport. Obviously, he's not even a player that's left this summer. That goes to show like we're scraping the barrel a little bit in terms of news. But yeah, it's a shame in terms of that future interest. I don't even know if it was declared when we sold him that we had a future interest in him, but we tend to for a lot of players that exit the club, don't we? But yeah, it appears that's probably ended. Let's be honest. But I hope he does well. I think there is a good League Two goalkeeper in there somewhere. But it does seem that he didn't quite take his opportunity with two hands, pardon the pun, last season at Grimsby, and he's going to try again at Newport.
Yeah, no, again, I don't think it's ever nice to wish someone to fail unless it's Steve Evans, but you know, it's one of those where I hope he can find something again and you know, rekindle something of a career, I guess. So that's Jordan Wright, and I think that then puts a little bow on everybody that oh no, he didn't leave the club this summer, did he? No, sorry, he left last year.
Yeah. What about Jay Ben? I don't think we've mentioned Jay Ben on the podcast just yet. He's signed for Hartlepool United, which surprised me.
Yeah. I mean, we mentioned this the other week again when it was kind of talking that he was leaving the club. A player that went to Bradford and was a part of a team that's obviously had a lot of success, but I think had one torrid afternoon. Got taken off and didn't really find his way back into the starting 11 or even the squad most weeks. So bit of a shame. Obviously one that we kind of had hopes for come to the end of his contract, and we decided to release him. And Hartlepool it's a choice, isn't it?
It is. I thought he'd be in League Two. And reading the comments on the announcement on Twitter from Hartlepool, there's a lot of Bradford fans on there that were wishing him well and said that they expected him to turn up at a League Two team. He was a bit of a victim of circumstance, in addition to his, of course, one poor game, because he featured relatively regularly at the start of the season for Bradford, who were fine, if not inconsistent, towards the start of the season. So he looked, I think, a capable right back at the start of the season. Had a bad game. Didn't really get a look into the team, but also that coincided with Bradford's real consistency in their form, and they went on a great run from kind of that mid-season to the end to ultimately get promoted. What an incredible promotion that was on the final day, almost final kick of the season, wasn't it? Anyway, so that goes to show that he probably has the ability to be a decent League Two right back. So I was surprised to see him lock up at Hartlepool, albeit a newly ambitious Hartlepool United, but there are a few of those clubs in the National League. It's not quite as simple as just throwing a few quid in the National League and you're going to guarantee promotion, because there's a hell of a lot of teams that do that. So again, wish him well, but I think he'll smash the National League. Like he's clearly a very, very capable National League right back. Wish him well, but I think it just goes to show that probably wasn't quite at League One standard. And hey, it was worth a try. Didn't work out. We move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one where maybe we've said this before with certain players, possibly a bit of a confidence player. If you need to get confidence, what's the best way to do that? You play below your level, you suddenly feel like a god, and then, oh, I can maybe step up and go from there. So, yeah, all the best. And again, I'll probably keep an eye out for Hartlepool's results because it just sounds like they're doing some strange things at the moment.
Just a little, yeah.
Yeah. So, right, on to players that... one particular player finding himself without a club that I think probably some fans might prick their ears up and go, "Ooh, interesting." George Grant has found himself without a club following the end of his contract. 31 years old now. Obviously, tongues are wagging. Would you have him back?
I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't expect it. And
Yep.
I know we've recruited some more experienced players recently, and I think it's really valuable to have some of that experience in the squad. 2 or 3 of those, maybe 4 of those players in the squad, I think can add some real value. I ultimately have one in each department would be perfect, wouldn't it? One at fullback, one at centre back, one at centre mid, and one up top. Would be perfect, really. I don't think you need one out wide because you just need energy out there, don't you? So that makes a bit of sense in terms of having the experience in the team. But our team is built upon athleticism, really. Let's be brutally honest. That's our strength. Set pieces, physicality, athleticism, be really direct. Not in terms of long balls, but just high tempo, high press, that sort of stuff. And yeah, I do wonder if we sign too many of the players towards the end of their careers, whether we lose that little advantage that we've probably got over lots of other teams. Now, something that I don't think it was mentioned too much or spoken about too much, but something Michael mentioned in our live show is that I think 42 or 43 out of the 46 matches last season in the league, we outran our opponents. That's a hell of a statistic, and that's something that we absolutely need to keep hold of. And I think if you start to introduce too many players of an older age, you maybe lose that little edge, maybe. So yeah, I wouldn't be against having him in the squad and welcoming him back because he's a player that we know who is quality. I would be very surprised to see him in a Lincoln City shirt again, though, this summer. But hey, never say never.
Yep, no, 100%. I agree. I think the question is, if he comes back, where would he slot in and who would he replace? I think the fact that we've just had a big discussion about JJ McKiernan going out because he wants to play first team football in that attacking midfield role. I think if you bring George Grant in, you then throw another spanner into the works and who's going to play there. So yeah, it'd be nice, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
No, definitely not. So, but next up on the cards again, we're kind of scratching at things to have a bit of a chat about that have happened this week. But one thing that it has been quite nice to see has been a bit of an increased media output from the club this week in terms of the social stuff, the video stuff. We've seen a few sort of training ground videos and the games that they're playing there and a couple of player interviews. It's nice to see. I think it's something that we've mentioned before. We've said that it's just it helps build that connection back up when people are saying, "Oh, I don't feel as connected to the club." And you're scrolling through Twitter, you suddenly see a little fun video of Eric Ring and Lewis Monsma playing a reaction game. You think, "Oh, that's fun," and it kind of humanizes things a little bit more. But yeah, no, are you a fan of little bits like that, Chris, or do you want to see more? Or
yeah, definitely, I really like it. I think anything that I only echo what you say, really, mate. Like anything that builds a bit of connection, that word humanize is a brilliant one. Anything that we sometimes forget they're real people sometimes, don't you? And when you kind of appreciate that a bit more and you see those things, you get to see their personalities a little bit. It just makes you feel like you know them. And we want to have that connection with those players. You did a fantastic interview, of course, with Reedy last week, and he's a player that we all felt we knew, that we all felt that we had a real connection with. And yeah, the more the merrier in that regard. So yeah, it's been really pleasing to see. I think Luke's done a great job in regard. Luke Thornhill, the media manager, has done a great job in increasing that this summer. I hope it continues. I'll be interested to see any kind of sneak peeks behind the scenes as well. That's always quite interesting to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But obviously, there've been a couple of changes behind the scenes this week. One big change behind the scenes. We've appointed a new head of commercial in Bobby Copping. formerly at Peterborough United. It sounds like it's a new role, and Bobby's obviously had a history playing the game, but his career was cut very, very short at the age of 19. His future lay away from the game, or sorry, within the game, but away from the pitch. And it sounds like he's had a decent career so far. Now has the role of head of commercial at the Imps. Obviously, it's clearly aimed at the more business side of things, but Jason Footers, who's the Chief Growth and Innovation Officer, said this week that it's key to get fan engagement on the table as well. And he sounds like he's got a few ideas in there. So, new appointment sounds like a decent one. Obviously, time remains to be seen, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Like, I'm not going to pretend I know Bobby too well, and I'm not going to pretend I've got a huge amount of business acumen and really understands those kind of finer workings of the club. But my understanding of this is that this is someone that's coming in to help us generate more income as a football club. We all know we make a loss every year, albeit not much compared to lots of football clubs at this level, but we still lose money. And ultimately, the more the better, and we can close the gaps to our other teams in our league in terms of our on-field budget, and that's going to help us be more competitive on the pitch. So ultimately, I imagine that's his role. It's a new role as far as we are aware. It's always quite nice to nick someone from Peterborough because they've done it to us plenty of times over the seasons. He looks like a really interesting character, though, doesn't he? He's got his own foundation focusing on mental health. He's obviously had a very unique, I suppose, and maybe an earlier in insight and introduction to off-field at football clubs. He's had a few roles at Peterborough. So, yeah, this seems like quite an interesting thing. I imagine it's not someone that us as supporters are going to see too much firsthand. Certainly not him personally, I wouldn't have thought, but hopefully we'll see the effects of that. And hey, if it allows us to earn a few more quid, if it allows us to improve the matchday experience for us supporters, then I'm all for it.
Absolutely. It did lead to a little bit of discussion around staff retention on social media. So we had a little bit of a chat. We'll talk about that very briefly, because there were some interesting numbers that were put out there, and I think it's worth having the discussion. I think it's that kind of thing where you look at it, you can interpret what you want from it. So if you want to think there's loads of people leaving, it's a toxic work environment, look at all these numbers, everyone's buggering off, then okay, you can glean that from it. However, you can also look at it and go, well, it just means that people are potentially moving on to bigger and better things and all the rest of it.
Yeah, this is a prime example of you can make numbers fit your narrative. But I think there's some interesting context here. Firstly, I'm not here to debunk the numbers. I debunk numbers there, and I thought the argument, the thing that we saw on Twitter that was presenting this, I thought it was a pretty reasonable discussion. I think it was presented in a very balanced way. I thought it was really good, actually. But that, and when I see good stuff like that, it makes me want to, let's dig into it, see if we can find some context. And first and foremost, for those of you that haven't seen it, ultimately, we rank quite high in the last 12 months in terms of staff leaving the football club, and also staff entering the football club as well. We were high for both of them. And there's one big change that's happened at this football club in the last 12 months, and that is that we've taken our catering in-house. So up until this season, I don't know if this is impacting the numbers, but this is my assumption, really, after digging on other staff members as well. So we'll touch on that. But yeah, just really quickly, ultimately, we employed a third-party organisation to sort our catering, so they were effectively staffed by them. That wasn't under our banner. This summer, all of those staff that are most likely temporary contracts, or often maybe short-term contracts, that are maybe often university students that maybe will then leave the city in the summer, they're going to be short-term contracts. So we had to recruit a lot of catering staff this summer that were going to work in all of the food outlets and in the bar at the football club on match day, and we wouldn't have had to do that before because it had been staffed by elsewhere. So I imagine that probably has a big role to play in terms of the large number of people joining the football club. And of course, if they're on short-term contracts, they're moving away from the city, etc., or move out of university and get a more full-time role in their desired field, it makes sense logically that there's probably a bit of a churn in that side of things, which is different in the last 12 months than it has been compared to any other season for us. In terms of the staff that's been at the club, I think I was just looking through this and thought, actually, this is pretty impressive in terms of our stability. I think the numbers catch the eye, but let's dig a little bit deeper. Some people that have left the club recently, Mark Tracy, of course, Luton been poached by a bigger club. He's a Luton fan, doesn't owe us anything, been brilliant. Some of the media team have gone on to bigger and better things. Like one I'm really aware of is Grant Brown's son, Jordan, was part of our media team a few years ago, left to work at Manchester United in their media team, currently works for McLaren Formula One team. So he's obviously gone on to bigger and better things. And a couple of groundsmen have kind of moved up to bigger clubs as well. So yeah, people are moving on rather than, not enjoying the environment. But I was looking at our football side. Board, leadership team, that's really stable. Liam's obviously been here for ages. Clive's been here for ages. Jez has been here for ages. Tom Shaw's been at the football club since 2018. Kieran Walker has been at the football club in one guise or another since 2012. Our sports scientist, Harry Rossington's been here for 8 years. Matt Page and Toby Ellis, our data scouts, have been here since the Cowleys. And Chris Cohen and both Joe Hutchinson have left the club and then returned again. So I think that's actually very, very stable in terms of staff, to be honest, and reliably informed that a couple of members of staff this summer have turned down opportunities at clubs in higher leagues in order to stay here. So yeah, I think the argument about the staffing and the conversation on Twitter was really valid and really, really balanced. But I think there's maybe some context there that maybe makes it a bit more understandable and offers a bit more context and some sense to it. But hey, ultimately, my opinion is I actually think everything's fine, and that's not just being blindly optimistic and blindly positive. I just think when you dig beneath the surface, actually things are pretty good on the whole, and yeah, there's probably not a lot to worry about in that regard. In my opinion.
I think the other thing for me, and this is purely from. I mean, it's kind of anecdotal, to be honest, but some of the stuff that I've seen for the more operational side of the business. So, your office staff, your kind of day-to-day running, as opposed to the footballing side or anything like the head of whatever. I've seen jobs before, and I've spoken to people that have applied for jobs at the football club, and part of the problem, I think, with some of that, with some of that turnover and with some of that, the churn, if you like, for the operational staff in those levels, I don't think the wages that are offered for those kind of middle level jobs of operational staff are necessarily that competitive with some other businesses around Lincoln. For example, like I say, I work in IT. If there was an IT job going at the football club, the chances are it probably wouldn't match a lot of other IT jobs in Lincoln. And Lincoln is, traditionally not the best in terms of, wages in the country. So if you're looking at being competitive for Lincoln, fair enough. But if you want to attract people that are going to be working at a football club in some capacity that's going to be more impactful, you're going to have to look at benchmarking nationally and all the rest of it. So I'm aware that's getting sort of into the weeds a little bit around businesses and all the rest. But yeah, I think the operational side of things, your office staff, that kind of stuff, I think it's probably people will see it more of a stepping stone job in that, in that arena than the people that are going to be the ones that get the headlines, we've signed a new head of commercial, we've signed, we've got a new manager, we've got a new head of director of football, whatever it's going to be. That's my feeling on it anyway, because it certainly seems, and I don't want to use disparaging words, but it certainly seems distinctly average for some of those positions when they're advertised. Plus the fact that they don't actually advertise the salaries when the job descriptions come out. It's only kind of after you've applied and you have the conversations, you go, oh well, no, it's probably where it's going to go. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think, as we've said, you can read into the numbers and make whatever you want fit that narrative. So interesting one. Right, so we are hurtling towards the end of the podcast now. So a couple of bits in here. James asks on Facebook, I wonder how many, if any, of the so-called project players have worked.
Yeah, I noticed. I was hoping you brought this up. I spotted this comment. I thought it was a really good question, actually. And I think we mentioned this, I can't remember if it was today or last time I was on. They all roll into one, Ben. But we mentioned, I don't actually expect us to sign many what would be labelled as project players anymore. I do think there's, albeit maybe not a huge financial output from the club in terms of wages and transfer fees, I just think we need to make every penny count for the first team. So I don't expect us to see anyone that comes in and gets loaned out straight away or hardly kicks a ball. But I think you can name probably 2 or 3 that have worked out. I think Ben House absolutely has worked out. He was definitely labelled as a project player. Jack Moylan absolutely fits that bill. He was signed incredibly cheaply, from I'm led to believe, and was not really expected to. It was a bit of a he's got some good attributes. Let's see what he has, and he's flourished. I think you can see Dom Jeffries in that role as well. I don't think he was a particularly expensive signing either. I know we paid a fee, but it was more a case of we think he could play a role in this system. I think the 2+2 contract really shows that a little bit as well, in terms of there's an exit clause there if it hasn't worked out, but there's a long-term option if it has. But of course, for those 3 that are good, there are a few that haven't worked out. Jay Ben absolutely hasn't. Sadly, Zach Bradshaw certainly hasn't worked out too well either. So yeah, we're probably about 50% hit rate. Who else was the other one? Centre forward we had. Charlie Kendall. Yeah, obviously that didn't work out too well either. So if these are relatively inexpensive, I don't mind as doing it, but I do actually expect to see it less often. But you only need one to catch. You only want to do so well to really, really be great for the club. I remember Ronnie Edwards at Posh. He's obviously gone to the Premier League now. I know he's on loan again, but he's gone to the Premier League for millions of pounds. Posh started from Barnet for a very, very small fee when he was a teenager. He'd only made a handful of appearances for Barnet, but has turned into an incredibly good player. It only takes one to work out brilliantly. So I think sometimes you've got to speculate to accumulate. I know I'm generally a glass half full kind of chap. So I'm willing to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt when I think we can see some fruition from some of those, but I don't expect to see too many certainly that are labelled as project players, because some of them were labelled as that by the club themselves when they signed, but I don't see that happening too much in the future. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I'm in agreement. I think the way that I've thought about it recently is, if you imagine your favorite band, you don't love every single one of their songs. You don't love every single one of their albums. They'll put one out every now and again that's a little bit duff. You go, okay, well, we move on to the next one. It's going to be the same. It's kind of going to be the same with this, isn't it? You'll find some players will be okay. Some players will smash it, and like you say, hopefully we'll have 1 or 2 that absolutely smash it and catch and go to the Premier League for millions. So we shall see on that one. It's just yet to happen, and unfortunately, as we found with Pordy and Sean Rowan, players aren't necessarily going to make the move up to the Championship. So it's going to be one of those. Realistically, it's going to have to be an attacker, isn't it? It's going to have to be somebody that gets the headlines. Somebody that gets the headlines by scoring 30-odd goals. It's going to have to be. Yeah, certainly attacking players. Attacking players in some way, shape, or form. They're the ones that score the big bucks. And I think it was it Exeter, I think, when they sold Ollie Watkins to Brentford, and then Watkins went to Aston Villa for something like 40-odd million. Exeter's sell on from that. They obviously got a good fee from Brentford initially, but they got some, I don't know if this is exactly correct, but something like 7 million quid from the sell on fee from that. And that's how you make your money, but ultimately you need someone in the Championship to purchase a player, be successful, and then move to the Prem like that. It's a bit of you play the long game a little bit, don't you? But hey, and I think that's that was the question that I was. Well, that was kind of one of the things I was getting at a bit earlier when I was saying about the future interest clauses that we have in people. How long does that last and all the rest of it. So if we have a future interest in somebody that absolutely, goes to a League Two club and performs out of their skin, and then they get picked up by a Championship club or a Premier League club, we will get a chunk of whatever goes forward. So there's always something interesting in that one. And then one very quick thing to wrap the podcast up for the evening. Andy says, was there a mention of a £1.1 million investment to spend on something? I think to address this one, there was rather an investment in the week. There was a Violent Companies House, I think £1.3 million put into the club in shares. Our understanding is that this is kind of part of that planned sort of drip feed investment, which kind of just offsets the losses for the season. So it's not like we've suddenly had a new backer that's coming in and gone, oh, I'm going to put £1 million into the football club. It's part of the planned investment. It's part of that planned rollout and all the rest of it. And I believe this is structured in such a way that I think Harvey doesn't become the majority shareholder or the majority owner, unless I can't remember which way around it is. But basically, the way that it's structured is that Harvey doesn't take full control of the football club at his request, essentially. So that's essentially how that one's worked out. Yeah, that's that. Keith says, I believe Joe will make the club $1 million+ in the future. I would like to think so, Keith.
Yeah, he's certainly got the potential. He's certainly got potential. If he can have add some real consistency to his game this season, then there's definitely potential for that. He's got.
I would love it if he hits the ground running this season.
Yeah, me too. He's got some really, really, really desirable attributes for clubs at higher divisions. So if he can add some consistency to his game, then I think we've got a hell of a player on our hands.
Absolutely. Not sure on that. Not completely sold on that new haircut yet, though.
I think it's better than his last one.
He does have a touch of the Fellaini about him, I think, now.
Don't mind it personally. No.
You've got some lovely cushioned headers, I think. So, but look, that is that's probably a good spot to wrap up the discussion, which means it's a good spot to wrap up episode number 389 of the Stacey West podcast. We've spoken about former imps. We've spoken about potential future imps. We've spoken about new members of staff, and we've given Fleetwood a bit of a kicking as well. That is what we like to do right here and right now. So, Chris, there's only one thing left for us to do. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
Pleasure as always, mate.
And as always, we will say, up the imps.
Up the imps.